we're going to create a template for the recipe posts. WordPress actually handles this by allowing users to visit the /recipe/ directory. Let's visit this directory now. Here, you'll find all our recipe posts that we've created so far. I created 10 recipes and gave them all images and various information. Pause the video if you want and create some recipes yourself. It's going to be important later on in this lecture. This is great and all, but it's not really flexible. There are actually various solutions to this. We can create a shortcode or a template, or even go with a widget. None of these are the wrong answer. It just depends on you. The template WordPress uses is called an archive template. Our theme doesn't have an archive template, so instead, WordPress uses the index template. Let's take a look at the template hierarchy again. I'll provide a link to this in the resource section of this lecture. Click on Custom Post Types. WordPress searches for a template named archive. WordPress searches for a template named archive and the name of whatever the post type is being displayed. If it doesn't find that, then WordPress will just use the archive.php file. If all else fails, WordPress will just use the index template. I don't want to use the index template since that template is for general purpose pages and I actually want to extend the page for recipes. Same thing goes for archive.php. So we will be creating a archive recipe.php file. Let's do this now. Inside our theme, create a file named archive-recipe.php and then paste in the code from the index template into this new template. At the top of this section, I'm going to add an h1 tag and input recipes. Let's refresh the recipe page. We can now begin extending this template. We can do this by using a class called WP_query. The WP_query class is a class created by WordPress to query the database. If you recall, we used the global object WPDB to query the database in previous lectures. The WPDB is probably the most flexible and fastest way to query the database, but there are a few problems. We have to build the queries ourselves if they become complex. This is where the WP_query class comes in. Unlike WPDB, you don't really type out your queries. Instead, you pass in a few parameters and then the WP_query class will build the query for you. Before I get started with the rest of this lecture, let's take a look at some of the cases where using WP_query class is beneficial over the other available functions. To add a list of related posts under the current post, for example, a list of all posts in the same category. To create two loops on the same page, for example, an FAQ page with the question titles at the top and the content beneath. To create a custom list of recent posts in the sidebar or footer of your site, when the recent post widget doesn't do what you need or you'd rather code it yourself. To create custom queries for taxonomies using more than one taxonomy to define what's displayed. To query post types which aren't output by the default query, such as attachments. These are just some of the common scenarios where the WP_query class can be used. Now, let's take a look at some situations where it wouldn't be appropriate to use the WP_query class. If all you want to do is change the way posts are being displayed for a particular content type or archive, don't use WP_query. Instead, simply create a template file for that archive or content type and modify the loop in that template file. If you want to display a few more or less posts than would normally be shown on an archive, don't use wp_query to create the whole new query. Instead, use pre_get_posts to modify the main query along with a conditional tag to single out where exactly you want to do it. Beware of running too many queries on a page. You could theoretically create a page with hundreds of custom queries, but just think of the server load. If you need more than 4 or 5 queries on a page, you might want to consider creating extra pages. All right, enough talk. Let's start using this class. I'm going to keep things simple. I'm going to strip our template to include the title and a link. So, remove all this code before and after this link. Next, move out these tags at the ends of the section tags like so. Make sure to indent your code for readability. Lastly, I'm going to break a line tag for each iteration in the loop. Let's refresh the page, and you should have something similar to what I have. Here's what we want to accomplish. I want to display only 3 posts at a time, and I only want to display random recipes. Let's go back to the template file. I'm going to create a new variable named query. I'm going to assign this variable to a new instance of the wp_query class. This class has one parameter, which is an array of arguments for our query. I'm just going to pass in an empty array for now. We now have a query object, which has the exact same methods as the regular loop. We have to replace these functions by calling the wp_query's method equivalents. It's actually pretty simple. These methods are literally named the same as these template functions, so we can call them by just prepending the query object and then just calling the method before each function. We don't have to prepend the query object before these template functions because after calling the _post method, WordPress will know where to grab the post info. We're almost finished. At the very end of the loop, we have to call a function called wp_reset_post_data. This is probably the most important step of all. We won't be the only developers using the wp_query class. By not resetting the post data, we can have strange and unexpected results during each query. So, it's always important to reset it afterwards, and you can do that by calling this function. Let's refresh the page again, and now our recipes are gone. Not what we wanted, but this is to be expected because we didn't pass in any arguments to the wp_query class. Let's fix this by adding a new value into our array. I'm going to create a property named post_type and set its value to recipe. Let's refresh the page and we should now see our recipes being placed back. This is literally the same thing WordPress was already doing for us. Now you have an idea of what WordPress is doing when it's grabbing post data for our templates. You may be asking yourself, how did I know that the post_type key was something I had to set? Well, I just looked at the codex to know what information I had to pass in. Let's take a look at the wp_query class codex page now. I'll provide a link in the resources section of this lecture. This page is actually longer than the wp_db class, and that's because this class has a lot of parameters you can set. If you take a look around the page, you'll find there aren't any queries to be found. That's because the wp_query class builds the query for you. All you have to do is specify what you want, and it'll take care of the rest. Let's read what WordPress has to say about this class. wp_query is a class defined in wp-includes/query.php that deals with the intricacies of a post's or a page's request to a WordPress blog. The wp-blog-header.php gives the wp_query object information defining the current request, and then wp_query determines what type of query it's dealing with, possibly a category archive, dated archive, feed, or search, and fetches the requested posts. It retains a lot of information on the request, which can be pulled at a later date. There's just so much you can do with class, but I won't go over every detail. It would be just too overwhelming. Let's go back to our template. Next, I want to limit how many posts are displayed per page. In my settings, I have this set to 4, but I only want 3 recipes for this specific template. Well, we can override that value by adding the posts_per_page key. Refresh the page, and we should now have only 3 recipes being displayed. We're almost finished. Next, I want to display these posts in random because why not? The argument we want to set is called order by. Let's go back to the Codex page and click on section 5.11. This will take us to the order section. Here you'll find information on how to set the order in which results are returned in. One of these values is called rand, which will randomize the order. So, let's use this value. Refresh the page, and you should now see our recipe posts being ordered randomly on each refresh. We're finished. We were able to create our own loop without having to rely on WordPress's default loop. We also learned how to create a template for a specific post type. It was very easy to do, and we didn't have to write a single query. I highly recommend you read up on wp_query class for more information. If you guys have any questions related to this class, then feel free to post them in the comments. Before I wrap up this lecture, I want to explain that you shouldn't be thinking wp_query versus wp-db. Both of these can accomplish the same things. I just wanted to introduce the wp_query class, as you won't always see every plugin out there use the wp-db object.